Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today's tutorial are these super easy, adorable slippers. I love these things. I think they are so cute. Now I'd made mine to look like sunflowers, but you can definitely do these blocks in whatever color you want to. Oh, excuse me. You could have so much fun designing different colors with these. I love these. They're so easy and they're adorable to wear. All right. There they are folded. Let's talk about what you're going to need. So obviously you can use any colors you want, but for mine, I used all Red Heart Super Saver. Get these out. So for the yellow, I used bright yellow. The brown is coffee. The green is hunter green, and then buff for the outer. So what I had in my mind was a sunflower with a fence row. That sounds silly, but that's what that's what I was going for. All right, so this is definitely just a you could use scrap yarn for this, but I didn't even use an entire skein for both slippers. I don't even think those were full when I started. So you're gonna need that yarn, or any yarn you choose. Now these are all 4-weight yarns, and they are a pretty what's the word I want to say? Pretty true 4-weight. Now if you go under a 4-weight or a thin 4-weight, these are obviously going to be smaller than what you're, or not as sturdy as what you're going to want, is what I'm trying to say. So I would stick with a true 4-weight size yarn. And what I mean by that is, you know, have you ever held two yarns together and both of them are size 4 and one of them is super smaller than the other one and you're like, that's a 4? What I'm trying to say is a true size 4 yarn. So I would suggest Red Heart. I can't even think of another one right now. Anyway, so a good size 4. And let's see. So having said that, I'm going to move right into I kicked my chair. Sizing. So I wear a size, and it depends on the shoe. I wear a size 7.5 to probably, well, I'm going to say 7 to 8. So some shoes I have are a size 7 and they fit good, and other shoes I tried on that's a size 7, they're way too tight. Well, then, you know, the same thing with 7.5 and 8. So I'm 7, 7.5, 8. And where's my tape measure? My slipper, I just had it. My slipper measures, well, oh, here we go. From this corner to this corner is 8.5 inches. Okay? My squares are 3.5. Okay? And I used a 4mm crochet hook, or a G. Now, if you're bigger, you know, if your foot's bigger and you want your slipper to be bigger, I would suggest to go up a full millimeter, not a half. So if you go to a 4.5, you're probably not going to see that much of a difference in your slipper. Now, but if you go up to a 5, like a full millimeter, I'd say you're probably getting into a shoe size of a 7.5 to 8, 9, 7.5 to a smaller 9. And then, you know, if you need to go bigger, this is women's sizes. So if you need to go bigger, then don't go to a 5.5, go up to a 6. And, you know, yeah, that should go up in size, because these do have a little bit of give, okay? So you don't want them loose to where when you walk, your foot just steps right out of them. You want it to be, you know, a nice fit. So that's why I'm saying the shoe size, I'm saying 7 to 8.5, or 8.5, I'm sorry, 7 to 8. Okay? The best thing I can honestly tell you would be to make your squares, and then stitch, like use stitch markers to hold it together and try it on and see, you know, where to go from there. But the best thing I'm going to tell you is, you know, if you want bigger than what I have, go up a full hook size, not a half. Don't go to a 4.5, go up to a 5. And then, you know, if you need bigger than, so I would say this is going to cover a 7, 7.5, 8. If you want 8.5, 9, 9.5, go to a 5. And, you know, so on after that. Anyway. Okay, so once you, I'm trying to think, I just completely lost my whole train of thought. Everything just went out of my mind. Alright, so there's that for your sizing. Alright, so you're going to have to make 12 of the little squares. In the tutorial, I'll just show you how to make one of them, but to make both slippers, you need to make 12. So 6 and 6, okay? Okay, so now I talked to you about the size for larger. Now let's say you want to go smaller. I would go, if you need to go smaller, I would go to a 3 millimeter, and if that doesn't work, then I would definitely leave off this last round. If you left off this last round and you used a 3 millimeter hook, that would probably be good for a toddler size. But smaller than a 7, I would just go to a 3 millimeter hook. Okay, so that should be good for your sizes. Now let's talk about sewing your squares together. Now, I slip stitch mine together, and mine does leave a little bit of a ridge on the inside. You know, when you slip stitch squares together, it's going to leave a little bit of a ridge. Now that doesn't bother my foot to walk on, although I could definitely see how it would bother others. So I am going to recommend that you whip stitch your squares together, and I show you in the video, in the tutorial, I show you a little sample of how to whip stitch. You just around and around through your the tops of your doubles and your chain. I definitely recommend whip stitching it, but you can slip stitch. Though, like I said, the slip stitch does not bother my foot at all, that ridge it leaves to walk on, but I could see how it would bother others. So got that. Let's see. Let's talk about the last of what you're going to need. So you're going to need the hook that's going to be good for your size, okay? So like I said, mine's a 4 and I'm a size 7 to 8. 7, 7.5, 8. I'm in that size. Then you're going to need a needle to weave in your ends, pair of scissors. Now, I don't have with me a hot glue gun or that puffy glue just to put on the bottom of your slippers because these are slick. You will fall, or whoever you might be making them for will fall. So I suggest to put a bunch of dots of hot glue or that puffy glue on the bottom of these just to give you some resistance, because we don't want anyone falling. So definitely do that. I just haven't done it yet. I need a new glue gun and I haven't gotten one yet. Anyway, so that's the only other thing you're going to need. Other than that, you are completely ready for your little slippers. And I thought about making a house coat to match, because I just think that would be too cute. That's neat how it comes together right there. But wouldn't that just be adorable to have a house coat that matches your little slippers? And at the end of this tutorial, I tell you, I'm kind of rambling, but I tell you guys I have a thought that I'd like to do. So what I would like to do is take this in round 1, do that in like a bunch of different colors, each of them different, and bright, well, no, it doesn't necessarily have to be bright, but each round 1 a different color, and then round 2, 3, and 4 do them in the same color, so a black or a dark gray, and so you have like a polka dot pair, and then have a house coat to match that, like a polka dot house coat. That is so stinking adorable. Anyway, get your guys' supplies together. Get the hook you're going to need. Like I said, for a size 7 to a size 8, I'd go for a 4 millimeter. for a size 8.5, 9, 9.5, I'd go for a 5mm. For a size 10, 10.5, 11, I'd go up to a 6mm hook, and I'm pretty confident you guys those are gonna fit good. They're gonna fit perfect so that you don't so that you don't walk out of your slipper when you're wearing them. Okay? All right, enough rambling. Get your guys' stuff together and let's get started. All right, to get started, we are going to get a slip knot on our hook and make sure you have enough tail to weave in. All right, now we're going to start with a chain of 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And now we're going to come right back to that first chain and we're going to slip stitch to form a little ring. Chain 1. Now I am just going to pull this tail, and what that does is close up that last, or well, I should say the first chain right there, so it doesn't leave a space. Alright, now make sure you work over your tail, and we're going to work 3 double crochet, chain 1, 3 double crochet, chain 1, and those chain 1s are going to be our 4 corners, okay? So I'm going to go straight in there, working over my tail with 1 double, 2 and 3, and then chain 1, and there's my first corner. So I'm going to go back in there with 3 more double, 1, 2 and 3, chain 1, there's my second corner. So now I'm going to come back into my ring. There is a huge spider crawling across my wall. I have never tried to refrain from freaking out on camera so much. Holy cow, that was a big spider. Ugh. Sorry about that. Okay, back to what we were doing. Alright, so I've got 1, and here is my second corner. Alright, so I'm going to go back into my ring with 3 more doubles. 1, 2, 3. So here's my 2 corners. So I'm going to chain 1. There's my third corner. So I'm going to go back in with 3 more doubles. 2, 3, chain 1, and that is my 4th double. So I have 1, 2, 3, and there's my 4th. So now I'm going to come back and I'm going to slip stitch into that first double crochet. So it's a little hard to see because of the dark yarn. So I'm going to come to my first chain 1 space that I got, the chain 1 corner right here, and I'm going to look and see right there's the top of a double, there's the top of a double, there's the top of the last double. So I'm going to slip stitch right in there. Make sure I have all my strands. I do. And now I'm just going to slip stitch. When I do this, what I'm doing is making sure I have all the strands of the yarn. I don't know if anybody else ever does that, but sometimes if I'm working with something that's a hard color to see, or you know, kind of a smaller hook, I always do that to make sure I get all the strands. Anyway, so chain 1, pull up a loop, and we are done with our brown. So I'm going to go ahead and cut that. Alright, so now we can take that center tail and pull it tight. Be careful, don't snap your yarn. That happened to me when I was making this. And I'm going to go ahead and weave in my ends. So I'm going to find a needle. Get that on my needle. So for this middle tail, if you look, so if I pull this, you can see that it's coming from right there, right? So that means it's already made it's already made it all the way around when we were working. So when I weave this tail in, I'm going to go ahead and go in and make it all the way back around again. Making sure I have that still on there to help lock that down. So I'm just going to go through some legs here. Nothing special. I'm not going to pull it tight yet. There, now I've made it all the way around again. So now I'm going to pull it tight, and then just to lock it down, I'm going to skip a few strands right here and go back this way just to help lock that down. And then I'm going to go back this way and skip a few strands again just to go through there. Now that's helped lock that down so that it isn't going to go anywhere. So now I am going to cut that tail. Alright, now for this outside tail, make sure you guys can see, I'm just going to run it through some of these back loops from the double crochet, and then just run it through some legs down the middle. And now I'm not going to pull it tight because I don't want to distort the little square I have here. So like, to show you what I'm talking about, if I pull that tight, see how it just folded it? I don't want that to happen. So I'm going to pull it out a little bit, and then I'm just going to snip that. And there is the center. Alright. Alright, so now my next color is the yellow. So move that over here, and I am going to get a slip knot on my hook again. Make sure you have enough tail to weave in. Alright, so now I just into any of these chain one corners, I get my fingers in there to wiggle them around. Into any one of these chain one corners, I'm going to go straight in there and just slip stitch and chain one. So I'm ready to go with the yellow now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work 3 double. Let me just show you on my square. 3 double, chain 1, 3 double. Go to your next chain 1 spit corner, 3 double, chain 1, 3 double. Okay? And you're going to have to do a lot of scooching with this. 1, 2. I am working over my tail too. Not a big deal. You don't have to. You can just weave it in later. So there's 3 double, chain 1. I'm going to scooch this as much as I can. I got tangled up in my tail. 1, 2, and 3. So there's my new corner. So now I'm just going to jump right to this next corner and work the same thing. 3 double, chain 1, 3 double. I feel like I did that too fast. I should slow down. Alright, so now I'm just going to jump to this next chain 1. And if you need to, you know, pull your stitches apart, and it should, kind of hard for you guys to see, it should make that chain 1 space come apart, and then you can see it better. There, you can see it. Okay, so go in there with 1, 2, 3 double, chain 1. I'm going to scooch that over, go back in there with 1, 2, 3 doubles. Now just jump to that last, you see it right there, the last chain 1 corner with 1, 2, 3, chain 1, and right back in there, scooch it if you need to, 3 doubles. 1, 2, 3. And now I'm just going to come straight over and slip stitch to the top of the first double, and it is right there. You can see right here looks like a little belt on a heart. Well, the belt is the slip stitch, the heart is the chain 1, and then right here is the first double. So we're going to go right into there with a slip stitch. Chain 1, pull up a loop, and we're going to cut. I'm going to go ahead and just keep working. I'm not going to weave in my tails right now. I'll do that off camera. Okay, so that is the green. Now we're going to move on to, the green. That's the yellow. We're going to move on to our green. And we're just going to do the same thing. Get a slip stitch, a slip knot on your hook. And then into any of the chain 1 corners, we're just going to attach, pull it through that slip knot. We're going to attach with a slip stitch and chain 1. And now we're going to work the same thing that we did with our corners. 3 double, chain 1, 3 double. And then what we're going to do is in between these two, I'm going to call them granny shells. We're going to work a granny shell. And then we're going to work our corner. Okay? So basically a granny shell is 3 double crochet together. When you're working with a granny square pattern, those are often referred to as granny shells. Not all the time, but I've seen others do it. Alright, so into this chain 1 corner, we're going to work 3 double, chain 1, 3 double. And remember this, you don't have to, but you can work over this tail, and then we can tighten that down whenever we weave in our end. Alright, so I'm just going to go right in there with 1, 2, 3. I really need to scooch that over. Chain 1 and back in there with 3 double. 1, 2, 3. Scooch that over. I'm going to go ahead and pull this tail and it'll tighten down that slip stitch. Alright, now in the space between these two granny shells right here is where we're going to work the next 3 doubles. So I'm just going to yarn over and go right into there with 3 double. I need some slack. Just like that. And now I'm going to jump to that chain 1 space and work my corner. 3 double, 2, 3, chain 1, scooch that over as much as you can, and go back in there with 3 more double. 1, 2, 3. And now in between these two granny shells, I'm going to work 3 double. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so I think you guys are gonna get the rest of this into the chain 1 space, 3 double, chain 1, 3 double, in between these granny shells right here, 3 double, and then 3 double, chain 1, 3 double, 3 double crochet. And I'm gonna meet you when I get done with this little granny shell right here. Okay, so I'm gonna finish this off camera and I'll be right back. Okay, so I just finished this last granny shell right there. So now we are going to slip stitch to our first double. And if you look, the little trick I use is the first thing I do is look for that belt. Well, when we tighten down that tail right there at the beginning, it kind of shrinks that belt a little bit, but if you look, it's right there. And here's my heart. Here's the first double. So I am going to slip stitch right into that first double, chain 1, pull up a loop, and we are done with the green. Alright, now to the last color, which is, what is this, buff? Yeah, buff. I'm going to do the same thing. Make sure I have enough tail to weave in an end. get a slip knot, on my hook, and into any of the chain 1 corners I'm going to attach with a slip stitch. Let's go right in there, pull it through, and then I'm going to pull it through the slip knot and chain 1. Alright, so we're going to work our same corner that we have been. 3 double, chain 1, 3 double, and then we have 2 granny shells that we're going to work instead of 1 like the green round. So we're just going to go right into that space, work 3 double, go into the space, 3 double, and then corner. 3 double, 3 double, corner. Okay? So I'm going to work over my tail again and go right in there with 3 doubles. 1, 2, 3, chain 1, and I'm going to scooch that as much as I can and go back in with 3 double. Alright, now come to the space between the granny shells right here and work your 3 double. Into the next space between, right here, and work your 3 double, and then we're to the corner. I wish there wasn't a shadow behind there. Now you can see it. There's my little chain 1. Go right in there. 1, 2, 3. Chain 1, scooch that over. 1, 2, 3. And there you go. So I'm going to let you guys work this, and I'm going to come back when I get to when I finish this last 3 double crochet, okay? So I'm going to work all the way around, and I'll be back when I get to the end. Okay, so I've got that worked all the way around. So now we are going to slip stitch to that first double, which is really easy to see now. There is our little belt, there's our heart, there's that first double. So I'm going to slip stitch into that. Chain 1 and pull up a loop. Cut, and we are done with our square. There's a little sunflower granny square. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and off camera get all these ends weaved in. So you guys get your remaining squares made. And when we come back, we are going to assemble the slipper. Alright, I will be right back. Okay, so I've got all my ends weaved in and my 6 blocks for my slipper. So what we're going to do first is we need to sew together a 2x2 square. So I'm going to take 1, 2, 3, 4. Alright, we need to sew across here and across here. So we're making a little 4x4 square. So we need to make sure that we have the right sides of our square. So all my double crochets on these squares are facing up. And we're going to flip them right on top of each other. So the back of the double crochets are facing us now. So that's the back of the squares. So right sides together means the right sides of your squares, meaning the front, the top of your double crochets, are on top of each other, okay? Now, like I said at the beginning, you guys can sew these together, stitch them together however you want to. I slip stitched my first slipper together, so I'm going to go ahead and stick with slip stitching this one together. Like I said, it does leave a little bit of a ridge on the inside of the slipper. It doesn't bother me to walk on, but I could understand if it would bother other people to walk on that. So I would suggest whip stitching it together. there's tutorials all over YouTube on how to whip stitch, but basically what you would do is get your yarn loaded on your needle, and then pick up where you want to sew. So we want to sew this seam right here, right? So pick up and hold where you're going to sew and into the back loops. So back loops meaning the loops facing you right here, and then the loops facing you on this side. And then what that's going to do is leave the loop on the inside of each of your squares. It'll leave that ridge right there on the outside. So the front loops are going to be on what shows on the outside of your work. Alright, so I'm going to start that over. I'm going to grab where I want to sew, and I'm going to go into the back loop of that chain 1 of each square. So catch the loops of each square, pull through a little bit. I'd say a good 1.5 feet, 2 feet, and then we're going to come right back over and catch the back loop of the first double and the back loop of the next double, and pull that. And now we're going to come back over to this side and back loop, just like that. Now come back to the side you started on, back loop and back loop, just like that. Okay, come back to the side that you start on, back loop and back loop, and you're going to just keep working that down your square. And then when you unfold it, see how the ridge stays, or the front loop stay to the top of your work. So that's how you, and it doesn't leave us the seam that you create right here, it doesn't leave a ridge on the inside. Now don't laugh, I didn't weave the ends end of this first slipper like slip stitching it does. So there's a little bit of a ridge here, but like I said, it doesn't bother me to walk on, but I could understand it bothering, you know, anyone else. So I would suggest whip stitching them together. So I am just gonna pull this out. But since I slip stitched my first one, I want them both to match. Did I just say whip stitch? I meant slip stitch. I don't know what I said. Anyway, I do notice that whip stitching gives you a little more space in between your squares, which would result in the slipper to be a tad bit bigger. I don't think it would be that big of a deal in the size difference from a whip stitch together pair and a slip stitch together pair. Just do what you did on the first slipper. Okay, so that's how you're going to whip stitch it, but if you want to slip stitch, you're going to get a slip knot. Make sure you have enough tail to weave in your end. Get that on my hook. And I'm going to just do the same thing I just showed you, only slip stitching. So I'm going to go into the back loop of that well, let me make sure you guys can see what I'm doing. There's my chain space right above the space, right above. That's the back of my first single, or my corner single. There's the bottom hump, there's the back loop. So I'm going to catch that back loop and the back loop of the chain right across. So we pull that apart, you see your chain space. There is your chain right there. There's the front loop, there's the back loop. I'm going to go into that. And what I like to do is just kind of push that slip knot to the side. Grab your yarn, pull it through both those loops, and then slip stitch. And then we're just going to truck right along. Back loop, slip stitch. Now I am making it a point to not do these slip stitches super tight. It's never a good idea to do slip stitches really tight unless a pattern calls for it, but anyway, so I'm just going to slip stitch along here. Alright, so I have one double left right here. I'm going to check this square. I have one double left right there. So back loop, and I'm going to go ahead and go into that chain one and into that chain one, back loops of each, slip stitch. So now I'm going to set this down just like this because this is where I'm working my seam. And now I'm going to pick up the next set, grab where you want to stitch, and I'm just going to keep right on along. I'm going to work into the first double. I'm not going to work into the chain because I want to leave the chain space for this center seam that we got to work. So I'm going to go right into the, find my chain one there and there. So there's my doubles. So I'm going to go straight into the back loop of both of those doubles with the slip stitch. Now that one I do want to work tighter just because that's a crossing, you know, we're crossing a seam and then we're also adding new. Okay, so I'm just going to go right along with the next double. And then the next one on this square is a slip stitch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this square open, and I can see that, you know, we worked on this square, we worked this way, right? So that means that slip stitch, we can just grab that with our fingernail and pull it down a little bit so it opens up that double crochet, the top of that double crochet you slip stitched into. So now I can get a hold of that back loop and the back loop on this side and slip stitch. And now I'm just going to jump right over that slip stitch and go into the next doubles and finish slip stitching across. Now I have a slip stitch on this side, so I'm just going to grab that and pull it to the side so it opens up the top of that double, and I can catch that back loop and slip stitch, next double. Now I have one double left on this side, one double left on this side, so I'm going to slip stitch into both of those, and I'm going to go ahead and go into that chain one space, or I mean the chain one, back loop of that chain one. Chain one, pull up a loop and cut. And there is a little seam we get. Okay, so now we need to sew this side up. So right sides together, we've finished this seam. I am going to unfold, and now I'm going to take this side and lay it over this side, and now here is the seam we need to sew together. So I'm going to get a slip knot on my hook again. I'm going to go into the back loops of that chain one, the back loops of this chain one, back loop, and slip stitch. And now I'm just going to slip stitch along. Almost to the center. Come on. This double. I have a double here, a double here. And now I have a little bitty chain one back loop here and here. They're a little hard to see. I'm just gonna grab them. I think I may have missed a little bit, but that's alright, it ain't gonna hurt nothing. Oop, about single crocheted. Chain one, or chain one, slip stitch. All right, now we're just going to jump right across this seam and go into that first double and into, wait a minute. One, two, three. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, that double here and here, and slip stitch, and then now we're just going to go all the way across. Okay, I'm going to finish this up off camera and I will be right back. Okay, so I made it to the end, and I am going to go ahead and work into the back loop of that chain and that chain, slip stitch, chain 1, and cut. Pull up a loop and cut. Alright, so there is our 2x2 square. So I'm going to go ahead and weave in these ends because I'm going to weave them in as I go. It's going to be a pain in the butt if I don't. So I'm going to get these ends weaved in and I'll be right back, and then we're going to finish up our slipper, okay? Okay, so I've gotten all those ends weaved in. So here's my little 2x2 square, and I have the back facing up, so the backs of the doubles are facing up. We are going to rotate that so where it turns into a diamond, and now we're going to bring in a new square, and this one we want the double crochets facing up. So this is the back of our work, this is the front of our work, and what we're going to do is under this square we're just going to lift that up and slide this square in just like that, so we have right sides together. Okay, and now I'm going to go ahead and get a slip knot on my hook. Go ahead and load your needle if you're whip stitching. Get a slip knot on my hook. And now I'm going to grab where I'm going to sew. So I'm grabbing this seam right here. Right here is where we're going to sew these two squares together, okay? So I'm just going to start right into that chain 1 back loop and the chain 1 back loop on this square and slip stitch. And I'm going to go ahead and just off camera slip stitch, and I'm going to stop when I get to right here, okay? So I'll be right back. We're going to do it just the way we have the other squares, okay? I'll be right back. Okay, so now I've got one more slip stitch to work in, or I mean double crochet to work into. And then I'm going to go ahead and go right into the side of the slip stitch here, and then I'm going to slip stitch into the chain 1 on this square, the back loop chain on that square, just to reinforce that. Alright, so now I'm going to stop, pull up a loop, take my hook off, and now what we're going to do is we're going to bring this square up just like this. So now the right side is facing up, and then we're going to rotate it. So what we're going to do is bring this square under this square. So I'm just going to fold it like this, okay? And then we're going to slip stitch across here. So I'm going to get back on here, and I'm just going to back loop, slip stitch into this double, make sure I'm into this double, corresponding doubles, and work right along. So I've got a slip stitch I'm going to pull to the side. Ah, come on. There we go. Alright, now just keep going. Okay, so here is my last double, and find my chain 1. There's my last double. I'm going to go into the back of that, the back loop of the chain 1s, And now I'm just going to rotate and I'm going to slip stitch this side together, okay? Back loop, back loop. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and finish this off camera real quick. Okay, so I've come to the last double crochet on this square. And now I'm going to come to the last double crochet on this square. And now I have a chain 1 available right there. So I'm just going to go ahead and go into the space. Get that chain 1. And slip stitch. Now I'm going to jump right over this seam and go into that first double crochet of this square right here. And now I'm going to bring these together, and this is where I'm going to slip stitch this side together. It kind of just lines up by itself after you work the seam, you know, we just finished. It just kind of lines up and you just bring the square over and we're slip stitching that together. Alright, so find the first double right there. Slip stitch along. So I'm going to finish this one off camera and I will be right back. Okay. Alright, I'm coming back. I've got one more double right here. One more double on this square. And then on this square, I have the chain 1 available. On this square, I don't. So I'm just going to go into the back loop of this chain 1 and then into the seam right here. I'm just going to catch somewhere. Go right in there and slip stitch. Doesn't matter where. Alright, chain 1, pull up a loop and cut. So now, if you flip this inside out, or right side out I should say, there is the top of our slipper. So this is our foot. Go in right like that. Ta-da! Need to weave in that end and tighten that down a bit. But, okay, so turn that back out. Excuse me. I'm going to get my ends weaved in and I will be right back and we're going to sew on the last square. I'll be right back. Okay, so I got my ends weaved in and I did not flip this in right side out. So this is still the back of my double crochets. I haven't flipped anything right out. And this one is the top of the double crochets. So what we are going to do is we are going to bring in our last square and we are going to turn it to where the double crochets are facing up, or the backs are facing up. So the right side of the square is down. And then this one, if you have this setting right, the right side of this square should be facing up. Okay? So we are going to bring that right underneath there. So back to back. And we are going to slip stitch along here. Let me make sure that's right. Hold on just a second. Okay, sorry about that. I was getting like confused in my head and I was like, oh man, let me make sure that's right. So yes, that is correct. Your slipper is inside out. Okay, so this square is right side up. Our square we're adding is right side down. So this is the back of this square. This is the top of this square. Pick this up, slide this under there. So our wrong sides are together. Okay, so go ahead and load your needle. I just grabbed a bunch of yarn tails. I'm going to get a slip knot on my hook if you're slip stitching. Alright, so I'm going to grab where I'm going to start sewing and I'm going to, or slip stitching. I'm going to start right here at this seam. Okay. And I'm still going to work back loop double or singles, slip stitches. So into that chain 1 right here, I'm going to go right into there. Now on this side, this chain 1's already worked into, so I'm just going to go right back into it. and slip stitch, and start slip stitching into the back loops of my doubles. And I'm just going to keep going. I'm sorry, not back loops, it's front loops. It's the loop facing you on this one and the loop away from you on this one. So we're still going to have that ridge on the other. Okay, so I was right. It's the two loops of the double crochets that are next to each other. So this one and this one. Just the two loops that are bumped right up against each other. Here and here. This one and this one. This one and that one. Alright, I'm going to get this done real quick. Slip stitching along. Sorry about that, guys. This square, I don't know why, it just, in my mind, it doesn't make sense until I work it out. Alright, so I've made it to that chain one right there, so I'm just going to catch this loop and the loop touching it. And then just come down this side. Two loops that are together. Two loops that are together. Just about done. Ooh, about skip one. Here and here. That should be the last double. Yep. Last double. Last double. Alright, now this one is the chain one, so I'm going to catch that loop. And then on this side, the chain one's already worked into, so I'm just going to go in there wherever I can get my hook and slip stitch. Alright, chain one, pull up a loop and cut. Okay, so now unfold, turn out our slipper. And there is our little slipper. It looks great. Okay, so I'm going to weave in these ends and I will be right back. Okay, so make up your other slipper and there is your pair of slippers. Aren't they so cute? I love these. Okay, so definitely I would suggest putting, you could put drops of puffy glue, hot glue on here. I haven't done that yet, but I need a new hot glue gun. The one I have, it's little, and it doesn't put out much hot glue. So I'm gonna have to get a new one. Anyway, make your second one, and there's your pair of slippers. So I hope you guys enjoyed my tutorial. Thank you so very much for watching. You guys are the greatest. I'd hug each and every one of you if I could. So, hey, subscribe if you haven't so you don't miss what's next from me, because I'm telling you guys, I got all kinds of stuff up in my mind I need to get from my mind to my fingertips to tutorials. And hit that thumbs up button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you haven't, and leave me a comment. Let me know what you guys think of this. And then in the description box, I have links to all my social medias, whichever platform you choose to use, or if you use all of them. And you make these, tag me in it, join my Facebook group. I would die to see you guys make these. Now, here's what's in my mind, what I'm thinking I'd like to do. So, what I would like to do is do the round one, do that in a different color, and do every square in a different color, and then do 2, 3, and 4 in a dark gray or a black, and then you have like a polka dot pair. I think that would be really cute. Ooh, and if you made a matching house coat out of the squares. See, like I tell you guys, everything's up there. Anyway, thank you guys so very, very much for watching. You're all the greatest, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.